region. We have the Iran on this side and we have Saudi Arabia on the other side. And when we see what Saudi Arabia is offering to the region, in all terms, we will not find any offer except maybe a lot of money, a lot of bribing money, a lot of corruption, which is more attractive than what Iran can offer in those terms. I made a long list. I will now not read it, but I find just one single element which could be more attractive for anybody, except you are very corrupt and except you want to govern with violence your own people.
Well, Dr. Saleh, while saying that Saudi Arabia is now actually becoming a sole fighter in its own war, the factors we have been discussing has led Saudi Arabia to cultivate more active relations with the GCC states like Qatar, UAE and Bahrain to work together to contain liberal policies that grew out of the Arab Spring and out of Iran's influence towards the Arab states as well. Now, however, given the latest GCC downfall, especially between Saudi Arabia and Qatar's political openness towards Iran as well, where does that put the earlier GCC efforts against the Iranian influence in the region?
I guess the GCC is unsuccessful step, especially what the Saudis are trying to impose on the GCC countries or what states or semi-states, emirates, especially regarding uniting these emirates and trying to create a new united army for these states, especially the Omanis. Also, they really did not agree with the Saudis, and then the Qataris also, and the Emirates also. They are not with the Saudis to the end in their political agenda, trying to create. On the contrary, the Emirates are trying to build a very good relationship with Iran, especially in terms of trade, in terms of good neighborhood and other treaties regarding the security even in the Gulf. And the Kuwaitis also, they really did very good statements regarding the interim agreement 5+1 with Iran regarding the nuclear yeah. So we are seeing here a kind of failure in all aspects, on all levels for the Saudis. That's why they are changing in even the regime. They really put aside Bandar, and they are now having troubles inside, poverty, malfunctioning of the institutions, and they really in a state of limbo. They don't know what to do for to preserve themselves, to continue in this life. That's why they are having a very hard time. Well, that's why I guess it's a kind of advice. They have to mitigate the situation instead of inflaming the situation toward kind of animosity against Iran or any other country. About 20 days ago, or some Maliki accused Saudi Arabia of bringing all these gangs in order to deteriorate the situation in Iraq and make these bombs and killing civilians. And so they have to really review or revise their way of thinking. If that's possible, I don't know if that's possible.
Well, we will talk more about their policies in the region and in their own house, and how will that affect the future of the monarchy. But after the second break, we will be right back.
Time. Variable. Event. The only constant variable in life is change. Broader perspective. Arguments and counter-arguments on our platform.
Global Insights. The globe on our platform.
Welcome back to the Middle East Stream. We are here with Dr. Mohsen Saleh and Mr. Manuel Ochsenreiter. Mr. Ochsenreiter, before we go deeper into the Saudi internal issues and regional problems as well, let's talk a bit more about Pakistan. The Saudis, besides Saudi Arabia, there is also Bahrain, one of the GCC countries, which has been recruiting Pakistanis in its police and its paramilitary force. Now, however, while pursuing relations with the conservative Arab and Muslim states in the region, is it wise actually for Pakistan to entangle itself with the dynastic and power politics of the Middle East, or can it dare to maintain equally friendly relations with Iran as well?
This question will be very interesting in that moment when a Pakistani government will desperately try to get close, for example, to the government in Tehran. But right now, it's more or less we order and we serve relationship. So those countries, like the Arabic countries, they order the soldiers, they order the human products, let us call it like that, and pay for this, at least. So I think we should watch at this very, very much practically and not put so much ideology into these questions, because Pakistan is a very poor country. We know that Pakistan is very much under the influence also not just of the Arabic states, but of course of the United States of America. We know that the whole Pakistani Secret Service is nothing else than a CIA product. So nothing what happens in Pakistan will happen without the permission or without the approval of the West. And just to say one more sentence, I wanted to answer when we always ask what is the geopolitical mission, what is the geopolitical vision of the West, of the United States in that region. We should get to an end to think about how it would look like when they build up something. I think it's very clear that the geopolitical vision is the vision of an organized chaos, that no country will become too powerful too quick, because this is the basic for getting the resources for a very cheap price in that region, and to keep the influence, the divide et impera, the divide and the country. I think that's exactly the geopolitical mission in this country. And countries like Iran, but as well as Russia, are against that philosophy, and even also Syria is against that philosophy. And in my opinion, this is the reason why we witness now what is going on there.
Well, speaking about the regional politics or the regional agenda, the Muslim Brotherhood version of the Arab Spring is seen by the Saudis as a threatening rival as well to their own Wahhabi hand or Wahhabi style or of the Islam. And yet the Saudis finance and arm the same rival inside of Syria. I mean, when will that, for sure that will backfire. When will that backfire on the internal Saudi politics? Or does the Saudi rulers have good plans to stop such a wave?
It would backfire in that moment when the Muslim Brotherhood fighters would come back from Syria or for wherever. We have to say that Saudi-financed mercenaries, Saudi-financed terrorists are not just fighting in Syria. They are fighting in Africa, in Nigeria. They were fighting in Bosnia, in Europe. So they are fighting even in Chechnya, in Afghanistan, everywhere. So it would backfire at that moment if these people, if these terrorists go to Saudi Arabia to claim therefore power. But this would just then backfire. Saudi Arabia would for sure shoot at those people or clear the problem very quick. But if in that moment, in that decisive moment, the West would say, well, no, you cannot crack down this uprising or whatever, then Saudi Arabia would have a certain problem. But as I said, Riyadh is one of the closest and one of the most faithful allies of the West. This will not happen. Riyadh can trust completely on the support of Washington until now. And it's not a coincidence that in 2011 the whole region seemed to be on fire, that the people were going on the streets and rioting, but not in Saudi Arabia, in the most Stone Age anti-democratic government, we didn't see any democratic movement, and this is not a coincidence. This has to do with the support of the West.
Exactly. Taken from what Mr. Ochsenreiter is saying, Dr. Saleh, another deep concern for the Saudis today is the byproduct of the so-called Arab Spring actually spilling over into their country. I mean, the chain of upheavals that has undermined autocracy and spread mayhem across the entire region. Will it spread into Saudi Arabia, or is the authoritarian rulers there just too much powerful with the help of their allies in the region as well as in the West?
I guess sooner or later this spring will spread itself, and we have seen many Saudis went off on the Facebook and other communication tools in order to express their unhappiness and their rage against the royal family. And also we have seen this kind of beginning of decadence of the family, especially after they invaded Bahrain, and they used this violence and crackdown against people who are marching peacefully in the streets of Manama and other places. And the Saudis went into Bahrain in order to try to cut the revolution from its hopes and from its demands of the what's so called also a royal family in Bahrain. And now they failed, I guess, to really uproot or to put down this revolution. As well in Yemen. That's why Saudi Arabia, in amidst of revolutions, they can't save themselves unless they don't counter or make any confrontation of this revolution. They have done something wrong probably in all these states, and they will, history will let them pay the price of their intervention, wrong intervention against the peoples and the will of the peoples in the Arab world, and building relations with the United States and with the Israelis also won't save them from the aftermath of
these relationships that we are talking about. I mean, the relationship between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia has actually before seen such rifts that similar to what we are seeing now, but now it's more different. I mean, we had the oil embargo after the 1973 Arab-Israeli war, and we had another rift after September 11, 2001, when 15 out of the 19 hijackers were revealed to be Saudis, and yet the relationship survived. So why was it shaken within the last 6 months because of the Iranian deal?
This is temporary. This is, I guess, temporary problems between the look or the view of the Saudis to the region and the United States to the region, although they agree on strategic things. That's what Obama said.
But the US has actually
during his
back.
visit to Saudi Arabia this month. He said it clearly that probably they have differed in some places regarding the intervention in Syria, for example, regarding probably the issue of Bahrain, and some of the Obama mentioned that in his speech in the United Nations about Bahraini people. They have to get the human rights demands, and they have also to be justifiably dealt with in order to make stability in the region. The majority of the Bahrainis, they don't look at the Saudis or the what's called royal family in Bahrain as something might really bring peace and bring reforms to these countries. That's why Saudi Arabia is exposed to all kinds of changes sooner or later, but closely will see these changes.
But speaking about these changes, Mr. Ochsenreiter, it seems that the rift between Saudi Arabia and the U.S. Widened about the subject of the rapprochement between the U.S. and Iran more than about the Syrian issue. I mean, the likelihood now that these negotiations between the U.S. and Iran will result in an agreed upon formula are seen relatively low, since they are powerful forces in both countries, in the US as well as in Iran, that are strongly opposing to such an accord and are working very hard to sabotage an agreement. Now, so what will happen? What will be the US's next plan in the Middle East in the event of such a failure in these talks?
Yes, as Saudi Arabia behaves towards Tehran like the jealous girlfriend behaves towards the adored guy who is going out with the other girl, and the other girl is right now Iran. That's a simple fact. So this is how we have to see that. But we have also to acknowledge that the United States of America, that the West, the Western Hemisphere is the dominant power right now in the region. And what I said before is the basic ideology they have is not to let right now any country be the dominant country in the region, to let this fight among each other. So the United States, and I'm convinced that in Washington are sitting very clever people who are organizing the relations to the Middle East and also to Central Asia when we come to Pakistan, who have this in their view, who have those problems inside. It will go on. Saudi Arabia, as well as Israel, by the way, will be Western proxies. These countries can with each other very good. Also, Pakistan will go on to be a Western proxy. Iran will be more powerful in case that the agreement is successful, and in case that the sanctions go down. Iran will have this economical, powerful, positive tsunami for all over the region, and this will be a big challenge for Saudi Arabia. Maybe we see Saudi Arabia getting sabotage, violence.
Well, Dr. Saleh, whether these negotiations fail or succeed, it is still some sort of a bad news for the Saudis. I mean, if the negotiations failed with Iran, it could unleash a flood of new countries seeking nukes in the region. And if it succeeds, it would mean a more stronger and more influential Iran in the region. So where do you see the Middle East heading after these talks end?
I guess, first of all, as a premise, United States does not like Iran. The Saudis are not grasping the factor that led the United States to do these negotiations with Iran. Iran is very influential in Iraq, it's very influential in Afghanistan, it's very influential in all this region. The Saudis could not have done anything for such negotiations, and the United States will go to the end with these negotiations. The United States are trying to punish Iran for the intentions, and the Iranians declared many times that they are not going behind or after the nuclear bomb, and that the Saudis and the Israelis are very angry because the United States is really understanding what Iran is about and what is for. That's why the Saudis are really lacking the knowledge of knowing the political mind of the United States and the political mind of the Iranians. That's why they are behind. They can't do anything good. That's why their mind can't function very well.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mohsen Saleh, political analyst, for being our guest for tonight. And special thanks to Mr. Manuel, Ochsenreiter, editor-in-chief for the Zuerst magazine in Berlin. Thank you again for your contribution on our show, Mr. Ochsenreiter. That was our show for tonight. Thank you for watching, and you can tune in next week for more from the Middle East stream.
Around the world, outside the mainstream, anywhere, everywhere. a media of your land, of your creation. A new media in a new era. Will it take the lead in the future? I believe so. This is